So that's part of it. You've got to focus more on what's really going to deliver value to the business, and let the computers do what computers are good at, and let people do what people are good at. Let you get out and lead projects and take maybe a bigger role in something that's going to really deliver business value, and not spend your time clicking that same button, clicking that same button, clicking that same button, clicking that same button that you click every week. Hey, my name is Joseph Mixon, and I am an automation architect with AdviseX.
And hi everyone, my name is Joe Clark. I'm our Director of Cloud Architecture here at AdviseX.
So today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about reasons that people give us, like real actual reasons that we've heard out in the field, why they shouldn't automate things. They're like, no, you know what, we shouldn't automate that, and here's why. And I think what you'll probably realize is that these are pretty close to home. Like, a lot of people have these thoughts. To kick it off, I'm going to go with the most obvious one. This is like the elephant in the room. Anytime that I'm at a customer and I'm talking about automation, it's, you're going to automate me out of a job. And there are so many things that come into play with this. Everything from the IT culture of that organization to what their actual job is to what we're actually automating. But I'll just say it like this. This is usually where I start out, is have you ever had to call the telephone operator to get patched through to the person? And the answer is no, because there are no telephone operators anymore. That job has been completely automated. We still use our phone all day long. Matter of fact, the telephone companies employ so many more people than they used to, because they're offering new services that were just unimaginable 50 years ago. And it just goes to show that depending on what your job is, yes, it may change. Like, if your job is just clicking a button and you just really like clicking that button and manually doing this configuration step, there's a good chance that's probably going to go away. That doesn't mean your job's going to go away. It just means that your job description is going to change, and it's good for you to be aware of that. So if you're considering automating something that is near and dear to your heart, just keep in mind, like, what can that enable you to do? Are you going to be the one that owns that piece of automation? Are you going to be the one that troubleshoots it when things don't go right? Are you going to be the one that iterates on it and makes it better and just owns that process? Or are you going to be freed up to work on something totally different? Maybe something that you've been wanting to work on for a long time, you just haven't been able to. Joe, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, automate me out of a job is there's basically two schools of thought on this. There's people that are trying to do it, and people that are scared to death of it, right? And the folks that are trying to do it are saying, I want to get to a point where most of my work is done and I've created an automated process for a lot of it. And the folks that are saying, this is all I know how to do, like, that's a little bit of a different worry, right? There's fear that, like, hey, this is my knowledge, this is what I know how to do. I mean, when I worked in-house at a hospital, we had a project where we brought in some software that automatic transcribing of doctor calls. So a doctor used to pick up the phone, literally record a recording, and then have people, they would just type it out. This software did OCRing, digitizing and recognition of voice, and basically keying out certain phrases, and that changed the job, because the workforce that we had that was required to actually transcribe those calls, it was cut to about 25% of the original workforce. But that 25% of the original workforce, after that remained, they started to say, hey, my quality of life went up. My quality of life went way up, because now, instead of literally just doing those mundane tasks like we've talked about in previous episodes, Joseph, then they were saying, hey, wow, I'm able to 10x my throughput here, guys. I can get through so many more calls. I'm just correcting things. I'm not literally typing things that make no value. I'm providing value by correcting a computer system where it couldn't get it right. You know what I mean? And providing that value in that manner, which I thought was really very cool. But it took a transition, right? There were people that were like, all I know how to do is, code these things out and transcribe physician phone calls. And for them, it was like, this is a scary time, right? There's software that's coming in that's going to augment me. And for the people that remained, it was a great change. It took some time and a little bit of pain, right? And a little bit of pain
Sure.
to sort of readdress that,
Yeah. Another way to approach that is, I've asked people often, I'm like, okay, so what does your to-do list look like right now? They're like, oh, dude, I've got 2 weeks of work that are due, at the end of this week. I don't even know where to start. I'm like, okay, yeah. How many projects are in the queue? How many things are you gonna be working on this year, but you haven't been able to get to it yet? And normally it's the same response. They're like, oh, God, yeah, we've got this project and that project, and we haven't even been able to get to the 5 other that are lined up behind it. And I'm like, okay, that's good. We can work with this. So what you're telling me is that you have better things to do than this menial task. They're like, oh yeah, I guess so. And I'm like, so that's part of it. You've got to focus more on what's really going to deliver value to the business, and let the computers do what computers are good at, and let people do what people are good at. Let you get out and lead projects and take maybe a bigger role in something that's going to really deliver business value, and not spend your time clicking that same button that you click every week, just making that that menial task happen, that necessary evil that has to be done, making that go away.
Right, there's a lot of real fear there. There was, at one company I was working with briefly, there was a guy who, he loved this particular YouTube video. I mean, maybe we can link it here, but it was a guy that was just he was an older gentleman who worked at the railroad warehouse, or not warehouse, the railroad museum in Canton, Ohio. And he was just super excited about the fact that he was like, let me tell you what, I worked on the steam engines, and then the diesel engines came and took all our jobs. And that's that, right? They're like, because all he worked on was steam engines, right? And the diesels came and took all our jobs. So it became this running joke that there was a particular desktop engineer that said, I don't like virtual desktop. That automatically creates desktops. That's my job. And from that point forward, we just kept joking. We're like, man, it's the diesel desktops, man. The diesel desktops came and took all your jobs, which is absolutely ridiculous. We're like, this actually makes more work for you. We're like, this is providing more value, and it certainly needs the same care and feeding, if not more, because now you're operating a service instead of saying, hey, I just have a bunch of point tasks to do in a row. So it became just this hilarious thing, this gross misunderstanding of saying the diesel desktops, right? It became another nickname for virtual desktops at that particular customer. And then also because quite simply, they were better. They were more accessible from better places. There was a ton of automation that surrounded them. They were nearly always available. So it became sort of a running joke. But it highlighted the fear in that person of saying, man, I really don't want automation to take over for me.
Dude, I'm totally stealing that. I'm using diesel desktops from now on. Or steam desktops, diesel, electric desktops. What's it going to be next? Where's the iteration in?
Right, exactly.
So one other common objection I hear when I'm brought in to help automate a process is that there's no way you can automate this. It's way too complex. I mean, you just wouldn't imagine the number of decisions I have to make and the things that go into making this process happen. And a lot of times they're kind of right. They're just not quite as right as they think they are out of the gate. So an analogy I like to use on this is a dishwasher. So nobody likes washing dishes. Most people don't wash dishes by hand. You have a dishwasher. Your dishwasher doesn't grab the dishes out of the sink though, and when it gets done, it dang sure doesn't put them up, nice, clean and dry in stacks in the right cabinets they need to go to. But it does a really good job of actually washing the dishes. So what I like to do is try and automate the worst part of it. Like, okay, we may not be able to automate this whole grand process you have, but let's talk about what you actually do. And let's go step by step and how you make those decisions that go into it, and see if we can programmatically decide, what we should be doing. And if there's some chunk of that we can automate, that's still going to be a huge win for you. Maybe you still have to initialize it. Maybe you have to validate something when it's done, but just taking out the dirty washing of the dishes in the middle is going to make your life a lot better.
Right, and maybe spending 30 minutes trying to figure out how you're going to fit 200 dishes into a dishwasher that has 150 capacity, maybe you should just spend that extra time just doing those other dishes by hand, right? To your point of saying hey, let's figure out where there's the most value and rock and roll, baby, and get the things knocked out that are going to drive that value for sure. Yeah, I mean that's a great example. I love that, Joseph. It's thinking about, hey, let's make it work for us, right? And I mean, just doors open here on my life a little bit. I'll get super torqued if the dishwasher doesn't get run when it's half full. I'm like, run it, just run it. It runs every day, just get the cycle moving so that we can get the next series of things through it. So all those jokes and memes about people that are organizing the dishwasher, that's me. I guess I'm typical dad now, being don't do it that way, stack the dishes this way so it's better. But yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, anywhere you can leverage an automated process like that, you're gonna have those fringe areas sometimes. And a lot of times it's important to understand the value that you're getting out of that, right? It's kind of the point there, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and even with the dishwasher, that doesn't mean it washes the dishes perfect every time. You know, occasionally you'll pull one out, and you're like, we're not going to eat off of that in its present state. Probably need to scrub that one by hand. And that's automation, right? Sometimes it doesn't do quite what you wanted it to. You're like, I might need to actually take and manually intervene a little bit to make it right. You know, just because you have a dishwasher doesn't mean that you can't wash the dishes by hand. It just means that you probably aren't going to, because you don't have to anymore.
Well, one other thing I can think of, Joseph, of reasons that folks might be not scared or hesitant to putting in automation is the thought process that, great, now I have to worry about fixing an automation process instead of just doing the thing, right? And we're like, sure, I get it, right? I mean, there's an XKCD comic that talks about that exact thing, where the automation you build and you it ends up consuming most of your time to maintain that automation instead of just reaping the value from it. And my candid thoughts about that are just, I'm like, it's a little bit snarky for sure, but I'm like, okay, take that and really measure it against your holistic amount of throughput. If you're automating things that have no value, then fine, that might be true. Like, you know, automating things that bring value is where you're like, this is the amount of hours we returned to the business last year. This is the amount of like tickets that were automatically opened and closed on behalf of our customers last year. And you're able to show that back and be like, okay, maybe that's worth it. Maybe that's worth having a full-time automation engineer or 2 or 3, depending on the size of your organization, right? I mean, one of our automation resources here at Advisix, that was his full-time job with 2 other automation engineers at a very large hospital, right? So understanding that and saying, people see the value in this. People understand why this is super important. I think that's a big part of understanding.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you know, going back to the whole dishwasher analogy, and I seem to like that one, so we'll stick with it. If you're spending more time fixing your dishwasher than actually using it, you probably need a new dishwasher. There's probably something wrong with the process in general. Like you're doing it wrong. You need to start over. But if you have 1,000 dishwashers and you're a dishwashing, you know, industry, I don't know, just go with it. I'm going somewhere. Then you probably might want to invest in a dishwasher technician, somebody who can actually manage that, because you're still getting so much more done than you could manually. But yeah, I mean, to your point, if you're getting that much value, it may come to a point where you do have to invest in someone to oversee that, to make it better. One thing I can guarantee is that if you do, you're going to get such a great return on investment on that, because they're going to be able to more quickly react to the needs of the business. They're going to help you be more agile in delivering whatever your end users want, and really just be able to make the automation platform shine and give the users a better experience overall.
Yeah, and I would say too that one honest point of, you know, where there is a tiny bit of credence that can be given to that school of thought is around the fact that a dishwasher needs far less maintenance than software. Software needs maintenance. I say this over and over again when I'm on calls with customers that are like, hey, we're about 2 years behind on platform XYZ. And I'm like, software needs maintenance. I'm like, it just does. It needs a lot more maintenance than other things. In fact, it's come to the point where I think, wow, I'm a solution architect that architects something and then 3 years later it's thrown down and burned and been like, oh, that technology is like 2-3 years old. Whereas somebody that architects like a bridge, like that's around for like decades, right? And I'm like, well, there's different levels of maintenance. So when we think about automation technology and what you're implementing, think about the level of effort to swap out dishwashers. You're like, yeah, it's a pain in the butt, but you can get it done. Think about the difference of changing major versions from one automation platform to another. Ooh, that's a different conversation, right? Now it's like, okay.
That might sting.
Yeah, that might hurt a little bit more. So that's the point that they make in that XKCD comic, right? Where they're saying, hey, like, you've built a monster. You must maintain it, right? And you're like, yeah, but that monster's doing so much for you. You got to be able to quantify it and show that back, right? And like the fact that numbers are really your best friend when it comes to showing the value of automation, that's a big point.
Yeah, to just, to kind of summarize everything we've talked about, I think that it's important to realize that you're probably not going to be automated out of a job. And if you are, that job's probably just going to go away anyway. It's not that this one project's going to make it happen. So be thinking about those bigger tasks that you can spend your time on. Do the things that you want to do that are going to bring more value to the company. And then also, maybe we can't automate this whole grand process that you work on, but there's a very, very good chance that you can at least automate part of that. So be willing to embrace that and to, get those dirty dishes taken care of by themselves so that you no longer have to worry about them.
Yeah, for sure. To quote Vince with Slap Chop, stop having a boring life. Hi there, Joe Clark here. If you like this video and you want to see more, please make sure to like and subscribe below. Thanks very much.